And for these crimes, the court has no alternative but to sentence you to eternal damnation on each count. That will be 8 terms of eternal damnation.
8? 8, my lord.
Yes, it's really quite simple. We've been over this. The matter is closed. 1 for the iPad, 1 for the iPod, 1 for the iPod Shuffle, 1 for the powder
Your
boo.
worship, these were profound and noble marks of humanity and civilization.
8!
Think of the grief they cause, the envy, the social stigma, the unfulfilled desire, the acquisitiveness, the resentment, the queues around the block just to upgrade, the relaunches, the polar neck jumper.
My client was frequently described as a god.
Very true. And for that we impose a 9th term of eternal damnation.
Eternal? Nothing works forever.
These 9 terms, your worship, to be served concurrently or consecutively.
It's a long time since I studied algebra at school, Miss Borgia, but I believe that the concept of consecutive eternities would tax even Professor Einstein.
We could always summon him, my lord. He's usually available, relatively speaking.
That won't be necessary, thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, sir. Concurrent eternities.
And costs, my lord?
Did he arrive with any funds?
Apparently there were some mementos left in his coffin. Something called an Apple Lisa, a cube, a device known as a Macintosh TV.
Of any value?
None whatsoever.
My babies. My Lisa.
Excellent. We will impound them as compensation.
They won't work.
That's beside the point. Take them away.
I am a god. iRadio will find functionality.
Come on, sir.
Next software was misunderstood.
Get down. Come on.
Is he always like this?
Usually only in private, my lord.
What do we have next?
An appeal, your lordship.
Against what?
4 terms of eternal damnation.
We humbly move.
Let me hear a few facts first. Who is the appellant?
Signor Niccolò Machiavelli, formerly of Florence.
Ah, presumably an acquaintance of yours, Miss Borgia.
We never met in our first lives.
Well, you surprise me.
My lord.
Yes, forgive me.
The appellant
Has appealed before?
18 times, my lord.
Practically a compulsion.
Can you explain why on earth we are willing to...
If we were still on Earth...
forgive me.
When you have been here as long as some of us...
Your worship, why is the bench entertaining yet another appeal from this...
We have fresh grounds to present to this court, my lord.
You make it sound like coffee.
We've heard these grounds before, your worship. He claimed the removal of the Berlin Wall, which I believe was the prompt for his most recent appeal. He claimed that this event proved his theories correct.
The case was entirely clear. The collapse of the wall utterly vindicated my client's theories. Gorbachev, Brezhnev, and Khrushchev had failed to follow his advice.
But the appeal was rejected.
I should hope so.
In fact, there have been 17 previous appeals, my lord. The first following the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. Then there was the defenestration of Prague, the Russian Revolution, both February and October, Amritsar, several simultaneous...
Enough! Really?
And on each occasion, the court was gracious enough to hear the appeal.
But came to the same conclusion.
Continue the damnation.
We have grounds.
Yes? Really? Genuinely new?
My lord.
Not a revelation that Kim Jong-un spends all day watching kittens on YouTube?
No, my lord.
Or that Mitt Romney rigged the ballot to make sure he lost?
Nor that, my lord.
Well, let's hear it then.
My lord, we humbly submit. We put before you with respect.
Get on with it.
We feel that to sentence this man, this good citizen of Florence, to 4 terms of eternal damnation is a travesty of natural justice. Because, as things currently stand, everyone, every single politician that is, from whatever political belief, Democrat to totalitarian, is now following my client's advice.
Everyone?
We can adduce evidence to this end.
Ha! Evidence.
Forgive me for following due process.
Oh, this man, your worship, would abolish the whole court process given the chance.
This is typical of the exaggerated calumny to which my client has been subjected since the day...
Since when, madam?
Since he dared write the first and still the most honest work of political guidance ever published.
And you say that every politician now abides by it?
Every single one who is successful.
And these are genuinely your grounds for appeal?
How can we keep a man in eternal damnation if his ideas have become universally accepted, universally studied, universally followed?
This is not grounds. This is idol worship. Your worship.
Let's have the clerk remind me of the charges.
Charge the first. That the accused did state that any prince should be prepared to act against charity, humanity, or religion, that any prince should be willing to enter into evil when necessity commands.
Against the very laws of God.
Which divine statute do you refer to? Precisely. Which divinity?
Custom and practice. Custom and practice. It's why they call them God. Isn't it?
It would not be for me to say. May I continue?
Please.
Charge the second, that the accused did state that any prince should be feared rather than loved.
Honesty. When did that suddenly become a crime?
Charge the third, that the accused did state that any prince would be wiser to have a reputation for meanness rather than generosity.
My lord, I must object to the translation. The Tuscan
No,
word
it's the
for...
Italian that's at fault. Your worship, this is horrible.
Charge the fourth, that the accused did state that any prince should endeavor to show in his actions greatness, courage, gravity, and fortitude.
Now you get sentenced to damnation for that?
Please allow the clerk of the court to continue.
Thank you. But if he does not possess them, that prince is highly esteemed who conveys this impression of himself. Any prince should know well how to be a great liar and hypocrite.
Interesting.
Your worship, it is not for you to express an opinion.
Just keeping an open mind.
I would still rather see a comment struck from the record.
I beg your pardon.
I would like your comment obliterated from the court record, your worship.
You would?
Well, you know, when things stay on record, people refer back to them whenever...
When they're on tape, you mean?
For instance.
When everything said in your office is taped, you mean?
Kennedy had that recording equipment installed, but nobody remembers that. It's always Nixon taped this, Nixon taped that. LBJ had all the tape machines renovated, but does anyone mention that? It's just Nixon did this, Nixon did that. I am not a crook.
Finished.
Sir.
Bring up the accused. I intend to allow the appeal.
Well, your
Consider
worship...
yourself lucky not to have been impaled.
Oh, your worship...
And stop trying to apologize. There's nothing more likely to get me sharpening a stake.
I am obliged, my lord. We're all aware of how you made the name Vladimir synonymous with impalement.
You're most kind. It was merely what they now call psychological warfare.
Except for those impaled.
True. It was a little more than psychological for them.
Call Niccolo Machiavelli, formerly citizen of Florence.
We call Niccolo Machiavelli.
We call Niccolo Machiavelli.
Cheer up, Mr. Nixon.
Trying, your worship.
You're not going to resign, are you? Again?
I am not a quitter, your worship.
All right, I'll stop now. Ah.
Are you Niccolo Machiavelli, formerly of Sant'Andrea in Percusina?
I am a citizen of Florence.
Here we go.
Sant'Andrea is merely the family farm.
Signor Machiavelli, your counsel has spoken eloquently on your behalf, and we have seen fit to grant this your 19th appeal against sentence.
Against conviction, my lord.
Convictions seem to be the entire problem here. A little attempt at levity.
Forgive me, my lord, my sense of humour has been dulled by 486 years of eternal damnation.
I do imagine it can take the edge off one's appetite for life.
If we might proceed, my lord, with the appeal.
Indeed. I see lunch approaching. We should make a start.
Sir, the first charge on which Signor Machiavelli was indicted concerned his advice that princes should act against charity, humanity,
Yes, do whatever you want, whenever you fancy. I remember.
Indeed. I believe this case is quite simply made. Would the clerk of the court please read chapter 15 of the Prince, formerly known as Il Principe, into the record?
The whole chapter?
Start at the second paragraph, if you'd be so kind.
From a man who?
Yeah, that's right.
A man who wishes to act entirely in accordance with his protestations of virtue soon meets with that which will destroy him, dwelling as he does among so much that is evil. Hence it is necessary...
Stop, please, stop, I beg Thank you.
Mr. Machiavelli?
Please stop her. Anything.
You concede the point. You withdraw the appeal.
Her reading. It's abominable. She's destroying it.
Of course I am destroying it. It's what I do.
I'm sorry?
Are you aware to whom you are referring?
The 4 arms, a sword in one,
His head in the other.
The generally blue skin.
The necklace of hams.
and earrings of skulls.
The general air of blood and destruction.
One more little hint.
It's Carly.
I am the Dark Mother of Destruction.
Yes, it's undeniably impressive.
Each of these 7 heads round my waist represents 1 letter of the alphabet.
Of course.
And you Italians seem to criticize my reading.
We all have our strong suits, weak suits.
I'd like to disagree.
My
but-
lord, what my client is trying.
Please, when she reads it, it ends up sounding like something out of the Middle Ages.
I beg your pardon.
Back then, my writing, my style, it was cutting edge. I was on the money.
You have been keeping up with the latest terminology.
It's amazing how eternal damnation brings out the vernacular in people. The new arrivals, they bring us whole new ways of cursing their eternal fate.
In a small way, I'm glad to hear it. Now, please continue.
You cannot allow this, please.
I do not want to lose my temper, your lordship. You all know what happens then.
My lord, the evidence must be adduced before the court.
Might my client read it?
I do have several sore throats.
Signor Machiavelli, pray continue.
Might I read from the beginning of that chapter? Context does offer some validity. Chapter 15. Concerning things for which men, and especially leaders, I've been working on a new translation. We can't call them princes anymore. That makes them sound like the sort of young oaf who wears a Nazi uniform to a party in Las Vegas.
You do keep up. Huh?
Things for which leaders are praised or blamed. I now turn to what ought to be the rules of conduct for a leader towards both his subjects and allies. Now, I know that many others have written on this point, and I understand if I am considered presumptuous to mention it again, especially as I intend to depart from the thinking of other writers. But my intention is to write something here which is genuinely useful to anyone who seeks to properly understand this.
By which you meant Giuliano de Medici?
Sadly, Giuliano died before we got to the printers. The French invaded Italy, they left behind havoc, devastation, and syphilis.
So, Lorenzo was by then ruler of Florence, and you'd lost your position as second chancellor of Florence.
Temporarily,
You never regained it.
to date,
The Medici family declared no use for your services.
I had served my city loyally for 14 years.
And you'd made remarks about their principal ally, Pope Julius II.
He launched his armies against France. It was madness, reckless, ludicrous. It should never have ever worked.
And yet,
Fortune smiled on him.
luck! You're saying that's all it takes.
Yes, the Pope's good fortune was improbable.
If it's all just luck, that rather puts you political advisors out of business, doesn't it?
The art comes in ruling one's luck.
Art! Some might call it a matter of sexual dominance.
My lord, again, surely this is
Fortune.
not...
Might I refer to this from chapter 25? Personally, I consider it better to be adventurous than cautious, because Lady Fortuna is a woman. And if you wish to keep her down in her place, you must beat her, treat her harshly. Time and again, we see that she allows herself to be mastered by the adventurous, rather than by those who calculate every step. She therefore tends, and this is typical of a woman, to love younger men, because they are less cautious, more aggressive, and with enough spirit to take charge
My
of her.
lord, you accept this as a metaphor? Attitudes to male-female relations?
We
Well,
all know you were ahead of your time, Miss Borgia.
there were so many rumors and lies circulated about...
You have something to say, Signor.
I also wrote, Your Lordship, immediately preceding that extract, to give it context. All my life, and for the 486 years since, I have been taken out of context again and again, so here it is. A leader may seem secure one day and ruined the next through no change of attitude or personality, because this, I believe, arises because a leader who relies entirely on fortune is lost when things change. A leader must direct his actions according to the times, and a leader whose actions are not suited to the circumstances will not be successful.
And did you feel you successfully suited your actions to the circumstances?
I am no leader.
But you wish to master your own luck, surely.
Luck! Luck takes men like me and squeezes us up into little balls, places us on the tip of her finger. Her beautiful, manicured, loving fingertip draws back her middle finger and flicks us off across the universe.
That's a little bleak.
How else did I end up sitting at a tavern in Sant'Andrea Pecorsina, a village so small it hasn't even got its own idiot, playing backgammon with a butcher, a miller, and that bloke from the kiln? What can I change? I have no armies, no fortified cities. I am the man who advises the leader, who merely steers the man with the power to wrestle with the Lady Fortuna, to seize her by the wrists, to force her down on the mattress, and use her as nature intended all.
If I might possibly bring you back to Pope Julius.
I'm perfectly happy to hear more about the wrists and the mattress.
Pope Julius, my lord.
The warrior Pope, as I believe he was known. Florence capitulated. The government fell. Your city was occupied by troops loyal to the Medici.
A good Florentine family.
Weeks later, you were dismissed.
I was asked to reapply for my job.
And how did that go? You were longlisted, shortlisted, interviewed.
I was arrested.
Arrested?
Detained.
For?
A plot against Giuliano de' Medici.
Well, that's one way of getting an interview, I suppose.
I was wholly exonerated, released within the month.
But you were questioned under torture.
My lord, my client should not be obligated to answer this. We fail to see...
You were tortured?
Ever so fleetingly.
In what way?
My lord, is this truly...
Interesting.
Is this court constituted to pursue simply what interests it?
Are we short of time, madam?
I don't know.
How much time do we have to settle this case?
Well, an eternity, I suppose.
An eternity or eternity?
Eternity would probably be a more syntactically accurate way of describing it.
Right, thank you. Was it the rack, thumbscrew, Spanish boot?
It was all the ridiculous upstarts trying to curry favor with the new state security apparatus.
Iron Maiden, screws, fiddle?
The list belonged to some hothead. Worse, an intellectual. But he had never even spoken to us, the names on the list.
My client spent a mere 22 days in the prison. That's all. A bureaucratic misunderstanding.
And how many visits to the torturer?
4.
Sorry?
6.
And it was...
Il strapago.
Perhaps you would care to...
Must I?
Now I'm getting interested.
Go on. Tell us.
You hear the key in the lock. It seems to take forever to turn. The door is opened. There is a guard there. He tells you to stand up. He actually manages to stink worse than the jail itself. That's an accomplishment. He pushes you along to this dungeon. They're always down the stairs, always lower. Your hands are tied behind your back, which doesn't make it at all easy to climb up on this stage. By the wall, he has to help you up.
Stage?
Box, really. Platform. Wooden, not at all sturdy. And then you feel them grabbing the rope round your wrists, and you can feel them tying it to something else. So you think they're going to make you stand on a box for a while. Maybe hours. You can handle this. Maybe days. You can handle this. However long you have to stand here.
Eternity, even.
And then they pull the box away, and your arms are flying backwards above your head. I heard the tendon here. This one. I heard it split. Not an attractive sound.
As second chancellor, you had ordered torture for enemies of Florence?
Do you hear me complaining?
But you proved your innocence.
I was innocent. I never met this stupid young man with this stupid list.
And so they released you?
Of course.
Your worship.
Yes, Mr. Nixon.
Might I, things were not exactly as simple as... May I examine the appellant?
Far be it from me.
Do you recall what happened on February the 20th of that year?
1513.
Yes.
I do not believe I was tortured that day.
In Rome, senor. What happened in Rome?
I was in a prison cell in Florence. How can I know what...
My lord, the witness is being deliberately obstructive.
The Pope, as we have already discussed, took a fever and died.
And what happened on March the 11th?
Giovanni de' Medici was elected Pope.
Had a Florentine ever been elected Pope before?
Of course not.
And how was this celebrated in his hometown?
There were glorious and remarkable celebrations, naturally, I'm told. Couldn't see a thing, personally. The lice kept marching across the walls. The rats continued to skitter in and out of the straw, stealing my food.
You must have heard something.
A little. Church bells, smelled some bonfires, shopkeepers in the market, I imagine. He was one of ours for the first time, now father of the world.
The Christian world.
We needed no other.
And a release of prisoners?
There was an amnesty, yes.
You walked out into the sunshine.
Mid-March. Only Englishmen can see the sun in Tuscany at Easter.
But you were not absolved.
I had been free.
You were not acquitted.
The Medici do not release guilty men.
They rarely released innocent men.
The accusation against you stood unchallenged.
We can't all have our successors pardon us, Mr. Nixon.
Was the accusation ever formally disproved?
Why would I conspire to kill the Medici?
Because they'd made you redundant. Their decree stated you'd been dismissed, deprived, and totally removed. Decree passed by unanimous vote in the Signoria. Another decree limited your travel beyond Florentine lands, and a bond of 1,000 lire to guarantee your compliance. Oh, no. And then they banished you for a year from the palazzo.
I did not ever seek to rise to a great place. I sought only to advise those who did.
Yet you now found yourself unemployed.
Regime change. Stuff happens.
And you were lucky, were you not?
Lucky?
To go free. I believe you also wrote, leaders who threaten injuries incur more danger than they who actually inflict them. Or rather, while great danger is incurred
by making threats, absolutely no danger arises from carrying them out. There is a simple reason for that. The dead are beyond thoughts of revenge. But a man whose life is under threat, finding himself now forced by necessity either to take action or to suffer the consequences, it's this individual who now represents the greatest danger to the leader.
So, going by your own advice, you were lucky to survive. It would have been better for him to simply have you executed.
Yet, hang on. A leader who wishes to guard himself against plots should fear those men to whom he has been overindulgent ahead of those to whom he has done great wrong.
You seem to be contradicting yourself, Signor Machiavelli.
You can accuse me of many things, my lord, but consistency has never been one of my fortes.
I submit to the court that inconsistently held beliefs are a primary symptom of psychopathology.
My lord.
Forgive me, it slipped out, strike it from the record. If we could get back to this book, if one can call it that. This book, Il Principe, the Prince, was by way of your more formal job application to Lorenzo de' Medici.
Merely a token of my devotion to the new administration.
If you would care to continue reading into the record. Chapter 15.
But my intention is to write something here which is genuinely useful to anyone who wants to properly understand these matters. I would contend that we should examine reality of states rather than some imaginary version of them. Many philosophers and writers have pictured republics and states which have in fact never existed, never been seen
Would you care to expand on this?
Plato and his ideal republic ruled by philosopher kings. Really, ever seen a philosopher king?
It is really not for you to ask the question.
We call our first witness. We call Plato of Athens. Are you Plato, philosopher of Athens, author of the Republic?
Too kind.
And did you advocate philosopher kings who would have absolute rule and yet rule benevolently and wisely?
Indeed.
And you were yourself invited to Syracuse to advise Dionysius when he was granted absolute rule by his uncle in order to rule as a philosopher.
That is correct. His uncle had been a pupil of mine.
And the rule of Dionysius II. How did that turn out?
He was driven into exile after some years of problematic
He
behaviour.
annexed an island and drove the inhabitants into slavery. There was the issue with doubling the taxes. There was an incident when he demanded the wife.
There were incidents.
Is it true that you wrote that the study of politics brings us the knowledge by which we enable other men to become virtuous?
I did.
So do you feel Dionysius became virtuous the more he ruled under your tutelage?
We had issues.
No further questions for this witness. Thank you.
And yet Plato's up there in the other place. They make statues of him, but his philosopher kings have never existed and couldn't. Or Karl Marx and his dictatorship of the proletariat. The proletariat turned out to be about as philosophical as a dose of piles. But plenty of respect for him. Seneca, Another great thinker. Wrote pages and pages about how to be the perfect emperor. And who was his pupil? Anyone? Nero. That went well, didn't it?
Mr. Nixon,
No, thank you, Your Worship.
Mr. Machiavelli.
This is why we should ignore all these hypothetical states. How people actually behave is so hugely distant from how people are told they ought to live, that any leader who prioritizes what ought to be done and forgets about what actually happens cannot hope to make his rule secure. Any man who decides to actually act in line with everything he's forced to say publicly about being upstanding and principled will lose power, because no one else out there is playing by the rules.
There you have it, my lord. The appellant instructs our leaders to do wrong, to act immorally, irreligiously, criminally, whenever they see fit.
Well, they hardly need me to tell them that. Nothing's changed. Look at this man, doing his best to ruin my country. Exhibits NM 125 to 246.
Controversial Italian leader, the Berlusconi show.
Do you like it, Bunga Bunga?
Mr. President he's so nice. I mean, why not? Well, I spent the whole night with the Prime Minister. He was very kind to me. He asked me whether I needed anything. The President is a romantic man. Oh my God. There were 20 girls there. It was like a harem.
Cavorting with prostitutes.
Bunga Bunga was so nice. It's something nice. It's not something bad.
Through it all, Berlusconi stays in power.
And they tell me he has just returned to Parliament as leader of the largest party. Immorality isn't harming him.
But President Clinton, look at the trouble his sex drive caused him.
Have you read my book? Clinton's only mistake was bad lying. He failed to see what would damage his rule. Not the oral, it was the lying.
Didn't you say a president should be prepared to lie?
God, never lie once the people know the truth, for God's sake. It worked perfectly well because they knew no better. Exhibit NM 693. Listen to this applause.
But I want to say one thing to the American people. I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never. These allegations are false, and I need to go back to work for the American people. Thank you.
He was lying.
It doesn't matter. They wanted to believe it. They didn't mind.
Except just months later. Exhibit RN 886.
Indeed, I did have a relationship with Miss Lewinsky that was not appropriate. In fact, it was wrong. It constituted a critical lapse in judgment and a personal failure on my part for which I am solely and completely responsible. I misled people, including even my wife. I deeply regret that. Now it is time, in fact, it is past time to move on.
He should have quit. If anyone looks like a quitter, he looks like a quitter.
Except from that moment, his approval ratings went up and his party gained seats in the next elections. The American people knows that men are men. They wanted him to be strong, to be virile. They wanted him to have young girls and not feel he needed to lie about it. It's the country of aspiration, of striving. And he told them, get to the top and you get a bit of everything.
So you would say he did what you advised?
No, apart from the blue dress. Schoolboy error.
You should have invited her round to dinner.
Things have changed a little since you saw things with a dinner, Miss Borgia.
So call up a takeaway. Chinese covers the taste of anything. What I could have achieved with monosodium glutamate in my kitchen cups.
Oh, Your Worship, I call for this latest appeal to be dismissed. The first charge remains incontrovertibly proven.
Would the defense like to make any submission before I rule?
If I might speak with my client.
Oh, just that. It is more than enough.
I must address the court with reference to all
that
the...
one.
Madam,
I am instructed...
and I am listening.
We are charged with maintaining that any prince
Leader
should be willing to enter into evil when necessity commands.
Do get on with it.
We are aware that if the appeal is dismissed, my client returns immediately to eternal damnation. We call one witness.
We call the prosecution counsel.
Your worship, they cannot possibly ask me to...
His testimony is central to our case.
Should we ask him to take an oath?
Is there any point with him?
We demand our rights to call any witness.
I am here to present the case for the prisoner.
Stand up, Mr. Nixon. Answer the questions.
There is only one.
Did you, or did you not, say the following? When the president does it, that means it's not illegal.
This is outrageous.
Did you say it?
Words to that effect.
Those precise words to somebody called, Frost.
Yes, but it hardly constitutes a defense to the charge of advocating illegal, immoral, frankly, crooked behavior.
Sounds like that to me.
The charge before the court is that the appellant advocates it. You go out of your way to instruct your ideal leader that this is what should be done whenever, wherever.
When the president does it, it's not illegal.
Stop that! Stop it immediately! My lord, the appellant has given his name to this entire principle of governance. Machiavellian.
We can hardly blame a man for becoming an adjective.
You worship the prince endorses immoral, criminal, underhand behavior.
My lord, we assert that the prince simply advises a form of response designed to cope with the fact that nearly all humans are immoral, criminal, or underhand.
If men behave like saints, the stage is left for the brutes. Behave well, and you will be outmaneuvered.
We call Alexander Kerensky.
We call Alexander Kerensky.
Are you Alexander Fyodorovich Kerensky, Prime Minister of the Provisional Government formed in Petrograd following the 1917 revolution?
I was.
Did you commit Russia to all its treaty commitments, follow all its national and international obligations, and seek to find a place for all in your administration?
I did.
And what happened?
The Bolshevik party seized power in a coup d'etat and were not dislodged for 70 years.
Thank you. That will be all.
But that hardly justifies using any means, any way of...
Appeal upheld. Charge dismissed. Are we done?
3 charges remain, your lordship.
My stomach is rumbling. Go on, remind me.
That the accused did state that any prince should be feared rather than loved.
Sounds like a no-brainer where I come from.
Well, you keep up with the vernacular yourself.
Thank you.
You want your citizens to go in fear of their leader.
The people always like to believe that they are compassionate people, so they will always demand compassion from their leaders.
You advocate the opposite, it seems.
One of our very newest arrivals down here was continually blamed for heartlessness. Every day. Apparently too strident, too inflexible, yet kept getting re-elected 3 times, never lost an election.
You'll forgive me, I'm not sure
Exhibit NM32, please.
I have only one thing to say. You turn if you want to. The lady's not for turning.
As you see, the people of Britain kept voting for someone who made a point of appearing heartless. Someone who kept saying, no, no, no.
The British people seem rather taken with her particular brand of cruelty.
You believe that's why she was successful?
It is far better to be feared than loved.
I think my client is overstating the case somewhat, my lord.
I'd like to hear.
Chapter 17, concerning cruelty and mercy, and is it better to be loved or feared? Surely every leader ought to want to be considered compassionate rather than cruel. Yet compassion is so easily misused. Cesare Borgia was considered cruel, yet his cruelty brought harmony to the Romagna, unified it, and restored it to peace and loyalty.
Oh, like this, you mean, huh? Exhibit RN96, please.
We had to destroy the village in order to save it.
In fact, that is a misquotation. This is how the original correspondent reported it. Exhibit NM67, please.
A United States major said to me today, it became necessary to destroy the town to save it. He was talking about the decision by Allied commanders to bomb and shell the town regardless of civilian casualties, to rout the Viet Cong.
You kept up with the Vietnam War.
It's always been a little favourite of mine.
And that doesn't amount to we had to destroy the village in order to save it.
They should have learned from Cesare Borgia. Before him and after he had been removed, the Romagna was a...
The Romagna?
On the east coast of Italy, my lord, just south of Venice. We call Cesare Borgia.
We call Cesare Borgia.
Are you Cesare Borgia, Duke of Valentinoise.
Hello.
I'm instructed as counsel for the defense.
It's so good to see you again.
If we might proceed.
Sorry, Judge. You know, that's the thing with exes. It's always difficult.
Your sister?
She's a cutie, isn't she?
Well,
Poor girl, one arranged marriage after another. She needed someone to love her.
Duke, you might tell us about your time as commander of the Papal Armies.
Oh, Daddy was so sick of it all. Always been these bickering rival towns and princelings and counts, always fighting, always at war. So I took charge.
And ruled it?
You know this, honey bun.
Please tell the court.
I appointed Ramiro de Loca, a gloriously cruel man, to bring it to order. Individuals were removed and executed. Blood was shed, but he did it. He was loathed, utterly detested. But after a year of Ramiro's overseeing, the Romagna was peaceful.
And he was universally loved?
They detested him, loathed and detested him universally. So I said I'd meet up with him in Cesena, laid on a fabulous meal. It was time to celebrate, the first man to tame the Romagna. Nothing too good. We had a simply extraordinary Valpolicella.
And then?
The citizens of Cesena found Ramiro de Loca in Piazza Buffalini the next morning. Well, he was in the piazza, and his head was in Via Boccaquattro. I think maybe his hands were in Vicolo Stale. We left the knife and block in the piazza. I believe that's known as symbolism.
No more questions.
The people were simultaneously satisfied and shocked. Cesare cleared himself and brought them round to his support.
Did Cesare have much trouble recruiting staff after that?
None at all. He was loved.
Oh, we know you loved him, madam.
My lord, must I really listen to this
What are we to do? These are the rumors. You and your brother.
He was a very good-looking man. People inevitably gossip.
At other times, you and your father, maybe sometimes all three.
My father was the Pope.
I think that sentence answers itself.
So, if I might clarify, summary execution, extrajudicial execution, is your preferred solution to a crisis.
Where would you rather live? In the Romagna, safe in your house, or here? Exhibits NM787 to 843.
A conservative estimate says 100,000 Iraqis have died since the war began. Other estimates put that figure as high as 650,000.
It's not the first time the residents of Baghdad have been greeted with horrific scenes like this, but the scale of the latest atrocity almost beggars belief.
The Iraq War has dominated world politics over the past decade. It's split the international community and caused deep divisions within countries.
We're going to probably debate the Iraq War for at least as long as I'm alive. Paul Wolfowitz, former US Deputy Secretary of Defense.
So you think they were better off before the invasion?
If I might interpose, my lord, it is striking that my client, whose everlasting reputation involves lying and dissembling, is anything but. In fact, he is someone who tells the truth too easily, too often.
It would be hard to argue with that statement.
And if I might say, I think your people miss you. They miss your honesty.
At least you knew where you stood, with me or on a sharpened stake.
And yet who comes out with the better reputation? Look at the Republic of Florence. Kind, compassionate, and the people suffered misery every year. Or the Borgias, ruthless, vicious, and a few individuals executed, followed by peace and stability for everyone. Would you rather be a Tutsi in Rwanda, ignored by all those sensitive Western leaders, or a Kosovan, where finally forced to act to kill some people, the democracy saved most of the population? A leader, so long as he keeps his subjects united and loyal, should never regret being called cruel. With just a few good examples, he will be more merciful than those who, through too much mercy, allow disorder to develop, and that can only end in murder or destruction. And what's best? Harm to the whole nation, or a few executions which offend a few individuals?
Just pluck them out and execute.
My lord, if I might, it seemed to do this leader little harm either. Exhibit NM29.
Now, reports from northwest Pakistan say that a militant commander has been killed in a US drone strike. Pakistani officials told the BBC that Mullah Nazir...
Under President Obama, there have been 6 times as many drone strikes in Pakistan as under his predecessor, George Bush.
I think that there's this perception somehow that we're just sending in a whole bunch of strikes willy-nilly.
Thank you. Nevertheless, the leader must be careful, slowly assemble all the facts, slowly come to judgment, and then be controlled and calm in his action.
Predator drones. You will never see it coming. You think I'm joking?
There really isn't much I have to teach that man. So, if you have to choose, it's much safer to be feared than loved. There's a simple explanation for this. Men are ungrateful, fickle, lying, cowardly, greedy. But as long as you remain a successful leader, the people are yours entirely. They will promise you their blood, their property, their lives and their children's lives, just as long as it looks like this promise will never be called in. But as the call gets louder, as the need gets closer, then they'll turn against you. Any leader who relies entirely on promises has no fallback. And that's because men have far fewer qualms when it comes to offending someone who is loved rather than someone who is feared. Listen to this. That's the weeping at King Jong-il's funeral. They didn't love him. They were just too scared not to pretend that they did. This is...
I think we get the picture.
We do indeed.
Love is preserved by a sense of obligation, and as men are only human, this will be abandoned whenever they want. But fear keeps men honest. Dread of punishment never fails. You should know that more than most.
I was re-elected in a landslide. I won 49 states out of 50. I was re-elected with 96% of the electoral college.
Exactly.
They loved me.
They feared you, Mr. Nixon, and that made them feel ever so safe.
Miss Borgia?
Any further questions at this point would be OTOs.
Agreed. Appeal upheld, charge dismissed. It must surely be lunchtime, yes?
Charge the third, that the accused did state that any prince would be wiser to have a reputation for meanness rather than generosity.
So, Signor Machiavelli, you're happy if your ideal leader is tight-fisted, denies people even enough money to live.
Such as providing your wife with merely a good cloth coat. Only getting your children a dog if someone donates it?
Dog?
Checkers. Exhibit NM74.
We did get something a gift after the election. A man down in Texas heard Pat on the radio mention the fact that our two youngsters would like to have a dog. And believe it or not, we got a message from the Union Station in Baltimore saying they had a package for us. You know what it was? It was a little Cocker Spaniel dog in a crate that he'd sent all the way from Texas. Black and white, spotted. And our little girl, Tricia, the 6-year-old, named it Check.
Oh, that's very touching.
Please answer the question, Signor Machiavelli.
Chapter 16, concerning generosity and meanness. It would seem to be best for a leader to be regarded as generous. Nevertheless, if you exercise generosity but gain no reputation for it, that can only harm you. Exercise it properly, and it may well not become known, and so you will still not avoid the accusation of meanness. Anyone wishing to maintain a reputation for generosity can never stop spending, not on anything the people demand. And that means one thing. The money will run out, and you will be compelled in the end, just to maintain that reputation of big spending, to tax the people, to weigh them down, do whatever it takes to get more money coming in. In 1999, the British Chancellor decided to pay a £100 winter allowance to every pensioner household in Britain every year. He gave a free television license for every pensioner over 75. He spent over 800 million British pounds, and because he didn't upgrade the pension, all anyone remembered was Exhibit NM411.
But the government only plans to put up the basic pension by inflation, and that means just 75 pence a week extra for a single person.
Well, for me, it would buy me another cup of tea. I do one cup of tea a week. But what proves that for anybody?
Nothing melts away as quickly as generosity. Even while you're showing it, you're losing the power to do so. And then you either become poor or despised, or, if you're determined to balance the books, you put up the taxes and become hated.
Some might label that behavior cruel.
My lord, you've already dismissed the charge of cruelty.
That's true. I have no idea why we're even discussing this charge. It's trivial, frankly. Appeal upheld, charge dismissed. You are free to go, Mr. Machiavelli.
Yes.
Thank you, my lord. We are
There are 4 charges, your lordship.
We have only had the appeal on 3 charges, my lord. 1 remains.
One more? Go on, then.
Charge the 4th, that the accused did state that any prince should endeavor to show in his actions greatness, courage...
Yes, the meat, please.
For the accused did state that any prince must know well how to be a great liar and hypocrite.
This sounds exceptionally serious.
My lord, of all the charges, this is the easiest to dismiss.
Indeed? It sounds troubling to me.
Our leaders cannot possibly hope to have all the qualities we demand of them. If I might bring us back to Il Principe. All men are mixtures of qualities which bring them either praise or blame. So, for instance, one man is said to be generous, another miserly, one heartless, one compassionate, one trustworthy, another unreliable, one dithering and cowardly, another bold and decisive, one affable, another snobbish, one has too much sex drive, another not enough, one sincere, another duplicitous, one too serious, another makes too many jokes, one religious, another believing, and so on. And leaders are no different. We just happen to talk about them more. But the people still want them to be saints on earth, so the hypocrisy is inevitable. We, the people, make our leaders lie.
You have a certain sympathy with that position, Mr. Nixon?
Your worship, this book, no less a man than Bertrand Russell described the prince as a handbook for gangsters.
We call Bertrand Russell.
We call Bertrand Russell.
Are you Bertrand Arthur William Russell, 3rd Earl Russell?
Yes.
One of the founders of analytical philosophy, and arguably the 20th century's greatest logician.
It could be argued.
But your principal engagement with politics came as founding president of the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. Is that true?
That can be posited as a true statement, in the year customarily known as 1958.
And since then, would it be true to say that not a single country has disarmed? And in fact, nuclear weapons have increased by a factor of approximately 3,500.
Logically, one...
No more questions, thank you.
The support of Bertrand Russell is clearly a highly valuable asset. Truly a man who knows how to change the world. My experience has been that those leaders who have achieved great things have not bothered to keep their word and have consistently used cunning to outmaneuver other men, however intelligent. Time and again, they outmaneuver those who rely on keeping their word. Look at these Exhibit NM 873 and 874, please.
Today, the Conservative Party is the party of the NHS. We've shown that in our commitment to ring-fence spending on healthcare. And we've shown it in our plans to give the NHS back to the people. So I want to make something very clear today. Will I ever join a Conservative government? No.
What I say to people is, why is it difficult in Iraq? Well, you can debate that forever, but you know, there are issues that I've already raised to do with, was the departification process too fast? Should we have disbanded the army in the way that we did, and so on? I mean, of course it's difficult. It's very difficult.
If all people always behaved well, this would not matter. But because they will not keep their word to you, you equally are not bound to keep your word to them. Nor will a leader ever suffer a shortage of legitimate reasons to excuse a change of policy. Exhibit NM 881.
Above all, I promise not to raise tuition fees. And to those people, I say this. We made a promise before the election that we would vote against any rising fees. We would vote against any rising fees. We would vote against any rising fees. It was a pledge made with the best of intentions. The best of intentions. But we shouldn't have made a promise we weren't absolutely sure we could deliver. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
There's always enough reasons. Men are so simple, so caught up in the crisis of the hour, that anyone intending to deceive will always find plenty of people who are quite ready to be deceived.
And whereof the people have been deceived.
They love to be deceived more than anyone else. A leader does not need to possess all those admirable qualities, but it is crucial to appear to have them. Which is why a leader ought to take care that he never lets anything slip from his lips that might clash with him appearing altogether merciful, trustworthy, humane, upstanding, and religious. If you don't, well, exhibit NM422, please.
It's very good to meet you. Very good to meet you.
Yeah.
And you're wearing the right colour today. Good to see you all. Good to see you. Thanks very much. She never could be with that woman. She's ridiculous. She's just this all bigoted woman. Said she used to be there.
You seem exceptionally proud of this.
I am bizarrely attracted to the truth, and the truth is that all politicians must lie.
But you admit that you always recommend lying.
How can I not? It is the only way to govern effectively.
Ah, my lord, you have it, an admission. An outright admission. Dismiss this appeal forthwith.
Miss Borgia?
My lord, we have already adduced this is now universal custom and practice. To name just a recent few, weapons of mass destruction, no rise in university fees, deficit reduced every year of this parliament. My client has gone down in history as a scheming liar. He's the opposite. He's the most honest writer on the subject.
And that honesty gives us all a bad name. This outrageous revelation of the truth drags us all through the mud.
My lord, how on earth can you damn my client to further eternities if he has merely had the honesty to admit what everyone else does anyway?
Because honesty is the last thing that's required.
I'm sorry.
What?
This book is a godless disgrace.
Maybe, my lord, we should adjourn for lunch?
I decide when we adjourn, but mercifully, I think this case is almost done.
I'm happy to carry on, your worship.
Shut up!
Sir?
Charity, humanity, religion, as though I care. That charge dismissed. Feared or loved, it matters little to me. My enemies feared me. Bulgaria and Romania still love me. Mean or generous, that's footling. These three charges dismissed. Appeal upheld. But now we come to this disaster. You, senor, have had the nerve to open it out to everyone, tell everyone, make it crystal ludicrously clear to everyone, boasting to everyone that all leaders, all politicians lie. I am disgusted.
But you agreed, it's true. Man is not written into some divine universe where the shining light of God will lead all to goodness.
I know that. My victims knew it even better.
Everywhere men boast their Christian virtues and then behave like animals.
They certainly do.
Man is not the child of God. He is an animal, and we look to a good leader to bring security to his people by taming these animals.
I agree.
Peace is not the normal condition of man. So surely it is a leader's job to create whatever government is possible.
Of course it's true. It's the one genuine truth in this whole farrago.
Then no court can possibly find me guilty of speaking a truth.
Accept this court, senor. The court of hell.
I denounce the Christian religion.
You think we only represent vax-ambles, the Christians? This is hell. Tartarus, Underworld, Valhalla, Jahannam, Naraka, Dio. Need I continue?
I don't think I should be kept in this two-star Guantanamo for simply telling the truth.
You think the other place up there would survive for even one day without us to do their dirty work?
They stand for truth.
Silly man. They stand for trying, for aspiring, for hoping it's all going to be better. You and I know it never will, but that's what they sell. That's what they're for. And you come along with all your truths, upsetting the entire edifice, millennia in the making. And now you tell everyone that's all there ever is. Slink around like a fox, attack like a lion, and otherwise lie, cheat, deceive, connive, and break your word. Of course, there isn't a politician alive today who doesn't do what you tell him to do.
I'm obliged.
But if I let you out of here today, let you up there, what are they going to say?
Justice has finally been rendered.
No, Mr. Machiavelli. They're going to say you were right all along, that people are ghastly, and there's never any point in trying to do any better. And that puts the good guys right out of business.
But
they're in the try harder business. That's what they exist for. Down here, we deal in how things are. How people actually are. Up there, it's all, I suffered for my sins, or I forgive them all. They know not what they do. They know what they're doing. You said it. You said it too bloody clearly.
Thank you.
This is where you belong, down here with us.
I want to go.
You're staying. Appeal
My lord,
dis-
we still have much further evidence.
Appeal
to lay before us.
You
dismissed.
can't. This is a disgrace.
As you so clearly and famously and everywhere pointed out, I can. Because I have the power. And the justice I dispense is dispensed to make the world safer, more secure. You wrote, a prince without power can bring no justice. I have the power, and so justice is mine, signore. Conviction upheld, sentence upheld.
Another eternity?
Or the same one, I'm untroubled.
I can't.
You should have thought of that 500 years ago.
Oh, it's so boring.
I agree.
No one down here is ever surprised by anything I say.
Quite.
No one argues with me.
Why would they?
I need to get up there. I need people. I need to see their shocked and appalled faces. I need to hear their howls of indignation.
There's always the shopping channel. Take him away.
Right.
This way, sir.
Oh, come on, come on. Don't be difficult. No, come on now. You don't make talk so hard. So hard, no. Come on, come on.
Thank you, your worship.
And don't you look so smug either.
Do I?
Maybe it's just those jowls.
Please.
What's for lunch today? I hope it's toad in the hole.
It's always told on Tuesdays.
Marvelous. Shall we go?
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
In The Prince, the cast in order of appearance were